new year. Oh my God, we're back again. Isn't that like a Britney Spears song? Like, I don't know. Coming at you live from my car, my Mini Cooper. Here in the new year, as the children are doing homeschool inside the house. Oh, joys. I am diving right in today into part 2 of my year in review in the company planning. We did part 1 of this episode before the holidays. And, I think it's kind of helpful to take a bit of a break in between doing part 1 and part 2, because it actually gives you the time, I hope, to properly review your numbers and review your finances. So please, if you didn't get a chance to listen to part 1, go back and listen to it. And you can spend a little bit of time doing all of the number crunching and reviewing the money that you made, how much you paid yourself, the different projects that you had, which ones were your top earners. That stuff's really important to look at before you start planning the next year ahead. All right, here we go. We are diving right in to part 2. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Are you looking to expand your network, gain momentum in your business, and be around your tribe of designers or decorators or architects? If you answered yes, then go check out the Collective Workspace. They offer a range of private office suites, flex workspaces, boardroom rentals, and many more perks, along with a trade-only design resource library. Oh, and did I mention a boutique gym? Their flagship space is located in the heart of Toronto. I am here right now in the Design District, with a second location opening up this fall in Mississauga. Go check them out at thecollectiveto.com or go on Instagram at The Collective Workspace, your tour, or take advantage of their free 3-day pass. Part 2. Okay. What I would like to do, first of all, is just kind of walk you guys through what I do to set myself up for this meeting. So, it used to be that I would try and do one day and I would cram in part 1 and part 2. And it was a really long, tiring day. And, when I first did it, I was like, oh, this is going to be so great. We're all going to go for dinner after. No, we were so tired. And by we, I mean my team. So everybody who works for me. I know bigger organizations do it a little bit differently, where they would just bring their leadership team. Well, heck, I'm not that big. I don't have a leadership team yet. So for now, it is simply the people that are on board, working within Rebecca Hay Designs, helping in all aspects of the business, not just the designers. It's everybody. And I bring them in. And I think it's super important, because when you have a vision for your business and your life, the people who are helping you get there will be a lot more excited about the work you're doing if you kind of let them in on the why and they understand the goals and where you're headed. So I highly recommend, if you have a team and you haven't done this with them before, do it. If you don't have a team, no biggie. Do this yourself. It's important to do it regardless. So if you have a team, make sure that they're present. It's helpful to have all hands on deck, because also, what's that saying? Many heads is better than one, or something like that. So what we do in anticipation of this meeting is, first, we've already had one meeting. So that first meeting, which I did have with my team in December, I will be having now this part 2 that I'm teaching you about today in today's podcast. I still have to have that. So that's happening soon. Things got shifted around a little because we are working remotely at the moment. And I think it's much more impactful to do this in person. But you hopefully have by now reviewed your finances. You've reviewed the year
in the past. And so now we're going to dive into how did that year feel? And let's set some goals and focus on your vision. So this is how I start. In anticipation of this meeting, I send an email to my team and I ask them to pre-consider the answers to 7 questions. So get out your pen and paper and write these down. And if you are driving, do not try and write and drive. We are going to give you guys a freebie attached to this episode. You can download it through the show notes. And what it is going to list out all the questions here that I'm going to give you now, as well as a very sort of skeleton outline of how I run this meeting. So you guys can take it, you can use it, you can tweak it, make it your own. I think it's really useful to have it in front of you. I always follow my Google Doc every time we do these meetings. It's an agenda, and then I type in whatever comes up in the meeting at that time. Okay, so the 7 questions I ask my team to consider and write down in advance of our meeting are these. 1, note your milestones and achievements for the last year. Nothing is too big or too small to be included on this list. This is not big company milestones and achievements. That's something else that we'll do in the meeting. This is personal as it relates to business. And so it's really interesting because what happens is you often get a lot of varied responses. That's the first question. Then 2, note your biggest learnings from the last year. Question 3, identify one lesson you will not repeat in 2022. Number 4, how has your mindset changed? Number 5, what would you like to be acknowledged for? I find this question is really telling. It helps with team building. It helps for you to potentially see what maybe your employees want you to see, but you don't. You've missed the mark, or maybe you recognize that they're not really getting the praise in the areas that they think they're excelling at. And maybe you see them excelling in some other area. It's really helpful to bring you all on the same page. Number 6, what was your biggest challenge, or what did you fail to accomplish? And number 7, name your big audacious goal for this year. So those are the 7 questions that I send out a few days in advance. I like to send them in advance so people have time to give thoughtful responses, as opposed to just throwing out those questions to them, like right there in the meeting. I used to do that. Like everyone would arrive, like, don't worry, I don't need to prepare. And I would be like asking these questions. And of course, when you're asked a question on the spot, you can't come up with the best or the most thoughtful answer because there's pressure and you freeze, and not everybody does well under pressure. Not everybody is like me. It's taken me a while to learn that. Okay, so those are the questions I sent out in an email. I'll be sending those out this week actually to my team so they can start to prep and plan. So then, the day of the meeting, what we try to do is we start off early. We ask people to come. I usually have snacks. We have coffee and tea. Everyone gets really comfortable and we sit around our big table and we dive right in. I have an agenda and I like to print it and I like to show everyone the agenda ahead of time so that they know what to expect. Sometimes in the past, what I've done is I've attached this agenda to that same email with the questions. I think it's helpful that people show up and they have a good sense of how long the day is going to be and how much is going to be asked of them. So it's up to you if you want to do that, but that's what I've done in the past. Essentially, I follow more or less the system that I learned in the book Traction. I've mentioned that book here before. It's been extremely valuable and powerful for me. I've now, over the years, modified and tweaked the learnings from the book to apply a little bit more to my business because we are smaller and Traction really is geared towards larger organizations. But this is essentially the agenda format that I follow. We get there, and in the beginning, it's called a segue. And this is where I ask everyone to share 3 things. We're not sharing the answers yet to those 7 questions, but we are sharing 3 things. 1, and this is something we just do like on the spot and we go around the table. 1, the company's 3 greatest accomplishments in their opinion in this past year. 2, their 1 personal greatest accomplishment for the year. And 3, what their expectations are for today. And we go around and everyone shares. And I always make sure that I write down what they say because we're going to circle back to these expectations at the end of the year. And as the individuals on my team, and if it's just you, then you're just going to answer these questions for yourself and write them down in a journal. I like to put things on a whiteboard if you can. You can type them into a document. But you want to add these accomplishments into a sort of running list that you're going to tackle later, which will be kind of like your wins, your accomplishments. You can write those down. It's helpful to look at what has done well, what has worked well, where have you succeeded? I don't know if anyone here follows me on Instagram, but on my Rebecca Hay Designs Instagram account, I recently reshared an image that I thought was quite powerful that I saw somebody else share. And it was basically a jar. And it was saying, this year, once a week, write on a little sticky note, one big win. I don't know if it was like a win or an accomplishment that you've made that week, fold it up and put it in the jar so that on New Year's Eve or at the end of the year, next year, you can open up the jar and you've got 52 little achievements and accomplishments that you can look at as a reminder to what worked and what was successful. And I think it's really important because sometimes we have a tendency to focus on the negative. No. Yes. I'm like, okay, where do we screw up? How do we improve, right? And sometimes I think as entrepreneurs, we forget to give ourselves like a little pat on the back and say, wow, like, look how far I've come. Look what we did. Oh yeah, don't forget we did that thing. Oh yeah, and that client said that about us or whatever it might be. Okay. So you're going to write these answers that everyone gives down or write your own down. And then you're going to review them at the end of the day to see if the expectations were met. Some examples of the expectations could be, I expect to solve, our invoicing issue once and for all, or I expect to be inspired for the year ahead. Whatever it is, no judgment, write it down. Okay. Then we dive into reviewing the previous year. By now, you would have already reviewed all the financials, all the numbers, right? So what you want to do is do a brief kind of overview of the numbers, but then you really want to dive into the goals that you had set. Now, don't worry if you hadn't set goals last year. You can kind of skip past this part, maybe just look at what you achieved. But the idea is every year you're setting goals annually for the company, and then you want to look at and see if you met them. So you want to look at, what were they met or not, right? So for example, a goal might be to land one new build client. Did we get that? Yes or no? A goal might have been to reach, $400,000 in sales. Oh, no, we only got 350,000. It was the pandemic, what have you. Okay, no. So you go through any goals that you set out for yourself. It could have been, my goal is to have a full-time office manager or to grow our team to be 3 designers plus myself. Whatever it might be, look at them, see if you achieved them, yes or no. Okay. Then you're going to look at some team building. So this is something I kind of threw in. I kind of did a blend of things that I've learned from different books. What I think is really important is to make sure that it isn't just about you and your business, especially if you have a team. So if you don't have a team, this won't necessarily apply to you, but I do think it's kind of helpful to hear. So because as some of you are listening, you might be thinking you want to bring on an employee, and it's just always helpful. So it's an exercise I got from the book, The One Thing. And I haven't done this yet with the team. I'm going to do it when we do our meeting, but each member of the team will receive feedback from the others in the group on his or her strengths. So we ask them, what is the single greatest strength or trait of each person? And you go around and you might say, okay, Rebecca, what's Rebecca's greatest strength? Her greatest strength is her passion, let's say. And then what is one weakness or hindrance to the success of the company? So this is not to be seen as a way to make people feel bad. It's just more to look at like, what are the people's strengths? What are their weaknesses? So weakness could be she takes on too much and spreads herself too thin, right? Very true. And so then we ask, what's the one thing that you'll commit to doing differently in the coming year based on the feedback you got from everybody else? I know this can seem a little scary to do. It's really quite helpful, to get that mirrored back to you. I always get scared doing this exercise. I'm always worried what my team's going to say about me. So worried what their interpretation is. But it actually has been quite useful. I've had people tell me in the past, you need to slow down, you need to take on less. Do I always listen? No, but it is helpful food for thought. And then we write it down. So I have some notes here on people on my team. I'm not going to say who, but last year, so-and-so committed to communicating more and being better at communicating. So-and-so committed to being more honest with herself and her workload and vocalizing what she can't do and ask for help. I had committed to planning better and not just flying by the seat of my pants, right? So we say, okay, this is what everybody said last year. How did we achieve this? And what are you focusing on personally for yourself within the organization for the year ahead? I know, but you guys probably didn't think I was going to go to this whole, I don't even know, woo-woo-y, personal development stuff, but it's all related. Okay. So we've done our segue, which is talking about expectations and celebrating accomplishments. We've done our reviewing the previous year, the goals. And now we've done a little bit of team building. This is also an opportunity where you could have everybody share the answers to the 7 questions, the ones that you sent in the email in advance. I think it's a great opportunity just for everyone to kind of talk about how they're feeling, what's great. And that's a good segue into the issues list, which is the next thing that we dive into. So I'll tell you, between each section, we take a break. We'll take a coffee break, pee break, water break, maybe a lunch break, what have you. So the issues list. This is where we look at what are the organization's strengths, opportunities, and threats. And we start to create big lists on a whiteboard or on a flip chart that we will add to as the meeting goes on and we'll deal with later. So what we will do is put strengths on the left column or a 1 page, and then challenges or opportunities on the right. And I tell everyone to just take a marker, and everyone in their own time will just go and write up on the board what they see as maybe an issue, what's a strength, and what are maybe some opportunities or challenges within the organization. And everyone can put up, if somebody else writes it, we say just put a notch next to it so we know that multiple people were thinking of the same thing. And we put everything up onto that wall so that we can kind of look at it and understand what can be done to solve these challenges. Once everybody writes what they're thinking up on the board, we may already have some things that popped up earlier in the team building. If there was an issue that popped up, we'll add that to the list. If something popped up at the very beginning when someone was sharing an accomplishment, then that should be on the strengths list. And then we sit back and we look at them, and we first celebrate the strengths and the accomplishments and the wins that we've had. And then we look over to the issues, and we read all the issues out loud, and then we decide which 3 issues are the most important to solve right away. We have to narrow it down. We kind of do a vote. People usually just do a tick next to their top 3. They I don't know, remember how we do it. And then you decide. So, in the past, we've had things like, what would be the past? We've had things like, constantly over budget with projects, for example. Or, not a great working relationship with current contractors. Or, projects not moving from phase 2 to phase 3. I don't know. Whatever the issues could be that are facing the organization, you write them down. And this is really the meat and the potatoes of this meeting, because it's really helpful to pay attention to what challenges you're facing in your business and come up with opportunities and ways that you can solve them. So in the past, I'll just read you some examples from the past. In the past, I've had things under my successes as our team is growing, our flat fees have been implemented for over a year. They're going really well. Our brand identity is strong. We did 2 incredible model home projects. We got published every month. We hit 5,000 Instagram followers. Our engagement is up. Strong vendor relationships. Those are some success examples. And then in the challenges column, we had things like being over budget, incompatible contractors, incompatible millwork companies, punctuality was an issue, team communication, team time management was an issue, invoicing and the ordering process, redundancy with data entry, our onboarding process or lack thereof, clients with unrealistic budgets, closing on phase 3 at the presentation. You guys get the idea. So we've written all those down. Then you want to go in and prioritize which top 3 you believe are an opportunity or issues that you can improve and solve. And you highlight or circle 3 of them. And what we do is literally in the meeting, we brainstorm one at a time to solve the issue once and for all. I know it sounds like a tall order. The first time I read about doing this, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, okay, whatever. But actually, it's super powerful. And the reality is that sometimes you don't fully solve it, but sometimes you put together a plan and a strategy of how you are going to solve it. It's really cool, like really, really cool. So somebody might come up with an idea that you would never have thought of because you're giving yourselves that dedicated time to just focus on that issue. We recently, in our most recent meeting, we did something similar, and an issue that popped up was the process of getting information from one program to another and who was in charge, and no one was really sure. And so we just said, let's end this once and for all. And we pulled out some paper and we stuck it on the wall, and we literally storyboarded, if you will, created like a flow chart of, okay, once the client signs on, who sends the invoice? This person sends the invoice. And then at what point are they connected with the designer? Okay. And then who sends this email? Does that make sense? Actually, maybe we should tweak that. Does it make sense for Vera to still be connecting with the client once the design team has taken over? And we really just hashed it out as a team. And we created a whole new process and flow chart for our onboarding that now someone can take and enter into Google and enter into our Asana project management template that we use. So it's very powerful. What you'll do is if you don't have it fully solved and have the answer, you create any to-dos out of that. And that to-do list, you'll assign individual people to do those little tasks that need to get done to help you solve the issue. Another issue, you might need to solve, like maybe you're having issues with one of the contractors you're working with. You're frustrated. The trades are not following through. They're not showing up on time. They're not doing great work, whatever it might be. And so as part of this conversation, you have recommendations to reach out to different contractors that you've heard other friends using. You come up with an idea like we should create a one-pager. Here's what it means to work with us and why our trade day is so important. All those things. And then at the end of it, we say, okay, Rebecca's job is to follow up with A, B, and C contractor that she's connected with on Instagram. And, maybe it's like Vera's job to create a beautiful one-pager, and then it's like Gallup's job to provide the information that will go on that one-pager, and boom, 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 and you set yourself a deadline so you know that in the next 2 weeks or next month, it will have been, all those to-dos will be taken care of, and hopefully you'll get closer to coming up with a solution. Okay, does this make sense? I hope this makes sense. I feel like if I could see your faces, I feel like there would be a lot of questions right now, but I don't see anyone. So I'm just going to keep moving forward. Okay, so that is a huge portion, and that can take anywhere from an hour to 4 hours. It could take longer if you're a big organization with a lot of people, but give yourself at least an hour. I would say it usually takes us about 2 hours with the size of team that we have to kind of really go through and prioritize issues. Sometimes what happens is once we start putting the challenges on the board in a list, we realize that some of the things that maybe one person in our organization thinks is a challenge, someone else has an immediate solution for, and that just gets scratched right off. Oh, that was a miscommunication. Oh, that's not supposed to be that? Oh, boom, that's not an issue at all. Figured it out. Or maybe someone says, yeah, I thought about that too, but here's the workaround. Boom, it's not an issue. It's really beautiful. And if you don't have a team to help you with this, that's okay. It's something you can strive for. It's also just something that you can do on your own. It's just giving yourself the dedicated time to do it. It's not the same lying in bed at night, closing your eyes and just in your head thinking about all the issues and potential solutions and trying to do it all between falling asleep and reading a book or whatever. It's really important to do it in the light of day where you can dedicate the time and you follow the process. Okay, take a pause. This is a lot. Okay, we're reviewing our year. So we want to move into your vision. We want to move into the part that I like the most, which is obviously the goal setting and looking into the future. If you've done this before, then you will have already a past vision to review. So at this point, this is when we will challenge the company vision. So nothing is sacred, and I want you to take a hard look at all of the following things. If you don't have the following things, this is your opportunity to create them. Your core values. Reevaluate. Do the values that you associate with your company still hold true? Your core focus. What is your niche, right? What's your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy? And what is your 3-year picture and your next year's plan? Those are the 6 things. And don't worry, we'll have this all on the freebie for you. But essentially, if you haven't done this, it's a really great time to start. I'm not going to go into too much detail because that would be a whole other podcast, and this podcast would be too long. And if you guys are interested in how we kind of tackle a vision component of business, I'd be happy to do that separately. I'm not sure if I've done that before here. I can't remember. But essentially, what we do is we have 5 core values. And interestingly enough, when I recently did this exercise, we changed them. I was reading out the core values, and it was a different team at the time when we created it, and this is a different business. And now with a newer team and with different goals, we looked at it and we were like, I feel like something's missing, or I feel like that doesn't really ring true anymore, or that's a bit redundant. And so we tweaked our core values. We have 5 core values. And then our core focus tweaked too, because as the company and the brand is changing, and I'm delving more into the coaching and the online sphere and the podcast, and now I'm doing an Airbnb property, the brand is kind of growing. And so our focus is less narrow. And so I had to kind of get in there, and with the help of the team, we rewrote our vision statement, which is like a mission statement essentially. And it's a good opportunity to just remember why we're all here and what we're all doing. Is your focus on like helping young families find functionality in their home? Like, what is your focus? We also like to look at this point in time at who our ideal client is. So if you have an ideal client statement, read it to your team, and you go through the ideal client statement, and you will decide, okay, is this still our client? I think I've said this before. I've said this for sure in the Power of Process, how, you create an ideal client, you have to review it yearly. So this is the point where you look at it and you say, is our ideal client still young families with babies, let's say? Yeah, no, our clients are really, their kids are a little bit older and it's now their second property. We need to shift the wording on who our ideal client is, because that will directly affect your marketing. And so it's important that everybody else on your team understands as well. So we go through that vision portion. So I can share with you, it's a work in progress, but my sort of new vision statement is to be a resource and inspiration for living your most authentic and inspired life, creating spaces where people can live, learn, and be the best version of themselves through a community that promotes a healthy lifestyle, home, and planet. Our core values are work hard, live well, exceptional client experiences, collaborative environment, operating with integrity, and solutions driven. Our niche is creating sustainable interiors that are classic and curated. That's our focus. And then there's our ideal client. So the values, your focus, and your vision. Okay. I'm sure right now your brains are probably buzzing if you haven't done this before. So let me move into the next and really the last 3 sections of this agenda. And I'm going to end it there. And I think we're going to need, it won't be a part 3, but I'll do another separate podcast on sort of the vision casting. I think I've done one before. So if I did, I'll put it in the show notes, but it's really, really helpful. And if you guys want to know more about core values and that type of thing, just let me know. Okay. So I look at the 10-year vision. And this is something that only you can create. This isn't something that your team can put together. Like, this is really you. You're the visionary. You're the business owner. And this is an exercise that I do always at the beginning of my courses. But what is your vision for the next 10 years? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see your company? And you can talk about it. It's a little bit abstract in some ways because it is so far in the future. But, if you want to be, let's say, the Google of interior design firms when it comes to employment, that's a helpful thing to talk about. What does that look like to you? Unclear still, lots of benefits, work-life balance possibly, I don't know. And then I like to break it down to 10 years, but then a 3-year picture, and then this year's plan. So what is the 3-year picture? It is something that's going to get you closer to your 10 years, but it's so much more tangible and it's so much more easy to understand. So I want you to write down all the things that you see as your goals for 3 years from now. Do you have your own office space? Maybe you have 3 employees. Maybe you are working exclusively with in cottage country. Maybe you've moved to another city. I don't know what it looks like for you, but your 3-year picture really matters because then you're going to look at your 1 year. In the past, I would put together this crazy, audacious 1-year goal and this crazy, audacious 10-year goal, and I would never make the 1-year goal, and the 10-year goal felt so out of reach that I just didn't feel traction or progress. And so that's where you don't have to get your team to tell you what the goal is. You can do that, but I love bringing the team on to help with the 1 year. So what I'll say is, okay, in 3 years, every designer on our team has LEED certification. Team members all need to complete continuing education in relation to sustainability and wellness. We have a chief creative officer that is not Rebecca. Every project leads to a new referral. Every client should be the ideal client. We have licensing partners that bring in $100,000 in revenue. We have certain dollar value, $5 million revenue in design clients. What does the 3-year picture look like? And then put it to your team if you have one and say, okay, if that's our 3-year picture, what do we need to do this year to get us closer to that? And this is where you can have a little bit of fun. Hey, you guys know that last year we did, let's say, $800,000 in revenue. Do you think we could do $1 million? And that's when some crazy person on your team might say, let's make it 2 million, right? And that's where you have to be like, well, let's look at the numbers. Is that realistic? And really bring your team in, if you have one, into the 1-year goal setting. And now you want to look back at the numbers that you did the last time. Part 1, right? How many projects did I have at what dollar value? So was it 3 projects at $200,000 each, plus another 2 projects to get me to 800. Okay, what are my expenses? You don't have to share all of that with your team if you don't want to, but it's helpful to kind of look at what are our big goals. Okay, we want 2 big projects this year. Okay, what does that mean? Do we need to hire? Yeah, we want to have an awesome administrator. Great. We want to hit 10,000 Instagram followers. It can be in all the areas of your business, your goals, but set them out so that everybody can see on a piece of paper, and then you get them typed up afterwards where you want to be at the end of the year. Whew. Okay. Holy moly. Time flies when you're having fun. I just want to say this is a lot. we are going to have a freebie for you, so do not worry, so that you can kind of go through, take your time, do this on your own, maybe for the first time. Maybe don't involve your team. It could be something that would feel a little bit overwhelming. But trust me that by the time you've done this a few times, you're going to get really good at it. And then you can start to really compare year over year. The last thing that I will tell you is at the end of the meeting, the very end of the meeting, well, right before the end of the meeting, we try to break down specific goals that we have for the year into milestones. So quarterly milestones. So if our goal is $100,000 in sales for the year, each quarter, our goal is 250. No, wait a second. 100,000. Yeah, no. 25,000. Oh my gosh, guys. See, math. Math and I are not best friends. 25,000 a quarter, right? And you want to break it down so you can kind of put it into bite-sized pieces. But then also, if your goal at the end of the year is to hire a full-time senior designer, what does that mean? By the end of Q1, how many projects do you need to have? By the end of Q2, what do you need to do? Do you want to start writing up the posting? Do you want to start putting together the role description? By the end of Q3, do you want to create an ad for Indeed, put it on Instagram, reach out to people you know, so that by the end of Q4, you've hired that person to go into the next year? Whatever it is, break it down into bite-sized pieces by quarters so that you can measure your traction every 3 months to see if you're getting closer to your goal. Okay, more on this to come. I'm going to definitely do an episode a little bit later in the year on my mid-year check-in and what we do to check in mid-year, look at these goals and reassess, because sometimes we set crazy goals, sometimes pandemics hit, and all shit hits the fan. So the last thing I was just going to say is at the end of the day, look back at the 3 questions you asked, or not the 3 questions, but that one question you asked of the 3 at the beginning, which is what are your expectations for the day? And if there's more than one of you doing this, I want you to go around and ask them to share, were your expectations met on a scale of 1 to 10? And if yes, why? If no, why? And let everybody share. And you should be honest with yourself. If your expectation was not met, why is it? So that you guys can get better for the next time. That's it. That is how I do my sort of year-end review, but also planning for the year ahead. It's what we do as a team. And I hope that was helpful and not too much information. Let me know. Join our Designer Meetups Facebook group if you're not there already. If you do try to join, you have to answer all the questions, because we get a lot of bogus people trying to join, and we're trying to be really careful about who we let in. So if you didn't get accepted and you applied, it's because you didn't answer all the questions. Please do that. And that's it, guys. Onwards and upwards. Watch out 2022, because you guys are going to take it by storm. It is time. 2020, 2021 were a little bit disastrous in so many ways. I feel like 2022 is the year of clarity and focus. And if I can help you guys get there in any little way, that would just fill my heart with so much joy. We have a lot of exciting things coming down the pipeline this year for the podcast. Again, always let me know if there's any guests you'd like for me to bring on or any topics you want to hear about. And I will see you guys very soon.